I suppose there are sort of three stories within this story. There is your childhood, there is your
80s.
addiction, and your the big relationship in the director's life. How do you visualize a film that is so complex?
The structure is very complex, but it came with the rhythm of the memories, very linked with how the water of a river goes. I wrote that sequence where Antonio is under the water in one swimming pool to demonstrate that this is the only moment when he doesn't have any pain. But immediately, that water drives me to other water, which is the river. And I put immediately the memory of my mother and her neighbors singing and celebrating that they were washing clothes, that it was also very hard. I combine always this somber present of the character of Antonio with very luminous moment of his childhood.
So was your own childhood very poor?
Yes, my family and I, we were we were born in La Mancha, which is like going from Madrid to the south of Spain. And at the early 60s, Spain was in a deep post-war. It was very usual that the half of the country was migrating to other places, looking for providence. Some of them they go for Catalonia, some others to the Basque Country, some others to France, and we went to a place called Extremadura, which is a region there. I didn't go to Levante, which is the place where the movie happens. I didn't live in a cave. But I know what to live in a precarious condition is, because we went to Extremadura, to a little village, and the street was like, it was not a street. It was very wild. It was like living in the far west. And also the people there were illiterate. So it's true that my mother had the idea of telling me to be the teacher of the boys of the neighborhood, that after working in the field, because all they were working in the country.
Why were you so literate and capable as a young child? You could read and write to the extent that you could teach other people.
I don't know. That was, my mother was really very, very creative woman, and she immediately saw that the neighborhood didn't know how to write and how to read. So she started reading the letters of everyone. And it was a little business. She invented me like a teacher. And she thought that it was a good idea that I could learn the big boys of the street to know how to write, how to read, and the 4 rules of algebra. I was very demanding. Like that, because they commend that to my mother. So this part, which is almost a real in the movie. I didn't fall or fall in love of any one of them, like in the movie. But it could happen anyway.
And what about Penelope Cruz? Is she your mother? Do you see your mother when you see her in the screen?
Well, Penelope is more beautiful than my mother was.
That's a terrible thing to say.
But well, she had the same energy, and also the older mother more. But it's true. And Penelope met her when my mother was alive, and they both have a good relation. Penelope for me is the ideal mother. I always give her characters of mother. She's a real mother, very, very, this kind of woman that without being a mother, her life wouldn't have any sense. In this case, is different from the other mothers of my movies, because the period, it was early 1960, which is a poor period for Spain, and Spain is a very dark period. Spain was living in a post-war, even the war ended at 20 years before, but it was a long post-war. And, you know, for a mother of a family, just to go and see that she has to live in a cave, and she should make a home with that is very, almost humiliating. And then this mother of Penelope is like she's having a burden on her back, trying to survive, to fight, but also, I mean, to ask that lady in black for
Scholarship, wasn't it?
Yeah, because that was the only way for Salvador to study. It's also very humiliating.
Did that happen to you as well?
Yeah, that happened to me.
Your mother wanted to send you to a seminary?
And also I was the soloist of the of the
choir.
chorus. And it was true that as I started singing, this is like a musical, really. I mean, that part of my childhood, it was like a musical, in the worst and in the best sense. I was singing all the time. And then the priest decided that it was better to know many pieces to sing in the church and in many other places, not only in the church, than to study the real issues. So I never went in a class of geography, science, literature. I remember that I only was present in mathematicas, maths.
Were you angry about this? Because you
Yes.
sound angry in the film.
Yes, because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I was a very curious guy, and I really wanted to be educated.
You say this mother is different to the mothers in your other films. I mean, could the final line of your career be all about my mother?
Well, you don't know, because, you know, the presence of my mother in my life and in my memory is much bigger than what I thought. I mean, I have a good relationship with her, but I didn't see her very often. I was always working. I couldn't imagine the huge influence of her in my work. Really, because, you know, the very first years of my life, I mean, let's say the 10 first years of my life, I was all the time with my mothers and the female neighbors and listening the stories they were telling. They were sometimes awful. Sometimes it was someone's suicide, a girl that it was pregnant of his father or something. I mean, really creepy stories. But that was, I think, the origin of the strong mothers of my movies belonged to that period when I was present in their lives. And also part of that memories I put in Volver. That there is not a boy in the patio listening the women, but it was about the memory of a boy that is there.
There is relatively little in the way of unconventional sexuality or sexual relationships in this film by comparison to some of your other films. Is that just because it's closer to real life?
Yeah, I suppose so. And, you know, I never tried to, even, I mean, in the 80s, that it was a period full of, in my movie, full of transsexual, travestite or gay stories. But I did it because it was part of my life. And also I wanted to impose them like part of reality. I knew that it was not the regular presence in other movies. So, I mean, I took the advantage and the power of being director to say life is also like this, and real life in a natural way. But I now, well, I'm concerned to just to tell the stories that I feel at the moment and that I need to tell, and perhaps there are not so many kinky characters. My life is more quiet and intimate.
Do you think you've changed attitudes, particularly in Spain, towards homosexuality? Yeah, do you think your films have changed the way people think?
You know, I don't want to sound so pretentious to tell that. Many journalists and many people, and I read many times on the papers, that I make the old Spain that I make them be like in the modern life or more contemporary European life. But I don't, I did what I wanted, what I needed to do in a very natural way, but I'm not so pretentious than to change a country because, Spain, there are many different Spains. And of course, I suppose that I represent a small part of that, but I cannot try to represent the whole country. There are parts of the country that don't think in the same way that I do.
Do you think things are going backwards at all?
Hay síntomas, por primera vez en España, de una nostalgia nada disimulada de la época franquista. Y verdaderamente está intentando imponer en España un tipo de país que ya habíamos superado y de darle la vuelta a un montón de derechos civiles que hemos conquistado a través de la democracia.
That's a very interesting perspective. It resonates for some people in this country as well.
Yeah, I know.
Is that how you would see it?
I'm very preoccupied by, not only by Spain, but in general. Realities like coming from Brazil with Bolsonaro, from Trump above all. I think he is the responsible of all this manifestation of the ultra-right. Y vivimos en momentos que la sociedad civil debe reaccionar de un modo muy firme contra ellos. O sea, que Trump está intentando armar un país como si se preparara para una guerra. Sí, yo hombre, con todo mi respeto a las elecciones que hubo para decidir el Brexit, pero creo que es un gran problema para este país y para las relaciones de Inglaterra con el resto de los países europeos.
Why haven't you gone to Hollywood?
Well, when I have propositions to go, I was mature enough to know what my ambition was as filmmaker. And for me, it was more important than to work with big budget, just to tell the stories in the way that I want to do it, and to be completely independent, and to behave with a complete freedom that I know in Hollywood that is impossible. Even at the beginning, they try to convince me that I will have all type of decision, artistic decision. But I knew that it was a lie because I talked with other directors. It didn't really tempt it to me. Only was one moment because I was very hooked by the story and that I loved really that the subject. It was when Laurie McMurtry, the producer and the writer of Brokeback Mountain, proposed me to do it. And for the first time, I thought that it was a film that I really would like to do it. But thinking about the short tale of Annie Proulx that it was based, it was a very physical story. And I was sure that I couldn't do it in the way I wanted. I recognize that Ann Lee did a wonderful work, and I loved the movie. But it was the only moment when I hesitated to do it or not, because I really, really loved that story of Annie Proulx.
Because when did you first want to be a movie director or to work in film?
Always, I think, since I was a child. Of course, when I was a child, I didn't knew or know that there was the figure of a director behind the camera. I was completely hooked about the actors. I thought that the actors were the one that made the story. When I was adolescent, then I discovered that there was someone behind the camera and also someone that wrote the stories. And then I thought immediately that I wanted to be, that part. I went to Madrid when I was 18, trying to study filmmaking, but 1 year before, Franco closed the school, and then I couldn't. So what I did is just to buy a Super 8mm camera and start shooting almost every weekend. And that was my only school. When I was a child, I thought about storytelling. I love to write stories, and but immediately I thought that I wanted to put it in images.
And did you always see your dream in film as storytelling, or did you have a sort of a glamorized view of it in Hollywood or blockbusters or money, or what was it that drew you?
Yes, to be a storyteller. And you know, when I was working also in many other works, in the telephone company, for example, as office assistant during the 70s. And really I never thought that I could become a director, because I was not in the situation. I mean, I didn't have money, and my family also didn't have money. It's like to try to be a bullfighter in Japan. You are not in the right place. But anyway, my necessity of telling the story was so big and so intense that I did it in a very small way with the Super 8. But my Super 8 always were written before with dialogues, with a script, with friends, in a very amateur way. But since that moment, I felt that I was a storyteller. Now my dream, and it was a real dream that I have, it was just to enter in a theater and to see that in the screen there are images that I shoot. That was my dream. I thought that in the best case, I could become a kind of minority filmmaker, and never, someone that internationally present in, with an international success. I thought even beyond my dreams.
So what is the purpose of cinema then?
For me, became a way to be alive. At the beginning, I made many things in the 80s. I write, I sing. I made many different things to express myself. But now the only thing is just, what I do is just to live and try to talk about it. I think this is the effect of the passing of time, but for me it's a way of living, and I cannot imagine my life without writing and shooting one story. So now, the movies that I'm doing now, I realize that are very different from the movies that I made during the 80s. And now I'm much more tempted and much more interested in being very sober, much more austere and contempt than before. Now this is what really appeals me, to tell a story that should be very moving, but with the less rhetoric possible.
This is a refrain in the movie as well. That's, what has frustrated you about the actor is a too heavy performance. And then when you advise him about putting on the play, you say, don't cry. Everybody cries. Yeah. Is that how you see the power of emotion? The sort of the moment before you cry?
Yeah. When the actor is almost crying, if he fights against that, the expression is deeper and more intense than just being crying and crying and crying. This is, for them, sometimes it's difficult to understand it because you have to control that. But that control at that fight becomes more expressive if you want to express pain than to be just crying like a Magdalena.
So do you think melodrama is indulgent or a waste? Or?
No, I love melodramas, and I did a lot of melodramas. But now I'm in the moment that I prefer to do dramas, as much as dry as possible.
Can you tell me about the role heroine plays in the film?
La película habla de personajes que han sido formados en la década de los 80, en plena explosión de la democracia en España y en plena explosión de todas las libertades. En la escena juvenil en la que me encontraba, estas libertades se manifestaban mucho a través de las drogas. Es decir, las drogas estaban muy presentes, todo tipo de drogas, incluidas, por supuesto, las drogas duras, y formaban parte de nuestro modo de ser libres. Yo nunca tomé heroína en esa época, pero estaba rodeado de personas que sí que tomaban, entonces sabía lo suficiente sobre los efectos de esa droga.
Are you tempted now?
No, I never did. I know that nobody believes me when I say that, but
I mean, because of your pain, you have a bad back.
yeah. No, I never did, and I have a lot of pain in the back. It's true, but I don't think it's the solution of the problem. I mean, in the 80s, it was so common that you can find in the streets. Now I didn't know how to get to that, and but I have to make research to know how the situation of heroin is in Madrid. That still exists, but it's not as, let's say, as popular like in the 80s. And no, but I heard that is something that is coming back. For example, in the United States, there is a kind of epidemic of opiates, how do you say?
Opiates, yes.
Yep. And there are in big cities, every weekend there are dead people by overdose, and this is what I heard in Spain. Fortunately, now the situation is much better than before.
In the film, the young Salvador has a sort of a moment of awakening of kinds when he looks at the young builder who he has been teaching, and there's obviously a moment of realization, attraction, love.
Yep.
Do you
the
remember?
origin of desire.
Yeah. Do you remember what it was like for you in conservative Spain, religious Spain, realizing your own sexuality?
Yeah, I remember that I discovered my sexuality when I was at the school, being 10 years old. I mean, in that moment, I think, the relation with the others, with your fellows, this is very natural. Of course, it's not something public that you are talking about that, because even you don't know exactly what it means or how you call it. But but I felt very soon the sexual attraction about my own gender, guys, and that was not a problem, because just as I told you, in the way it happens is when with everyone is trying to discover it themselves. Of course, if I kept on living in the same place, in a rural place, I will have problems. But I immediately went to Madrid, and I could do my life in a free way, and also working in very regular places like the telephone company. I knew that many other guys have problem with that issue. If police know that you are gay, it was just a reason enough to put you in jail. So I think that I was very lucky all the time, that I didn't have any problem to develop my life and to be myself, because I was not always in the modern arena, in the modern places. I was also working in the morning with tough people that has another education and another type of thinking. Sometimes freedom is something that you took it by yourself. You don't have to wait that someone allows you to be free. Since the beginning, I behave in this sense, in talking about sexuality, very, very free. And fortunately, it didn't give me any kind of trauma. But it's an issue that, of course, even now you have to fight. Not everybody was so lucky as I was. And even now, there is sometimes, in Spain, which is a very liberal place, and it's one of the first countries where the gay marriage was official. But anyway, you have to be careful. As thinking as a society, to be careful when appears some kind of homophobic gesture, because that exists already, even in Spain, in the street. And when you discover, you have to fight against that.
This podcast is called Ways to Change the World. And we've talked about a lot of the ways in which you have changed the world in your way. But I also like to ask people, if you could just change the world, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do?
Oh, that's difficult, because I don't feel intelligent enough to change the world. By the moment, I feel very frustrated about that the basis of democracy are the parties. I mean, in Spain now, there is a demonstration that the different parties, left and right, are not able to find out the problems of the people. And it seems to us that, I mean, talking about just the Spanish society, there is the general feeling that they are not talking about us, that and also that they don't have any capacity, and the situation demonstrates that, even to find the way to create a government. I really would like to be in a moment, and I don't know how to build it, in a world where the parties disappear, and the own society leads our lives. But I don't know how to do that. If not, I will tell you.
And will the next film also be about you?
No, not at all. Even perhaps the next one, it will be in English for the first time. No, I'm adapting. I cannot tell you now because I don't want to. It's very soon. But I already has the first draft of one adaptation of short stories of an American writer, a female writer, and it doesn't happen even in Spain. So no, it's very different from the last one. I mean the new one, Pain and Glory, and very different from the others. It will be a big adventure.